this storm has had a considerable impact on our police department, just like it has our community. We have experienced a building that has lost power, building that has lost water, and yet we've continued to be able to perform the operations that are expected of our community. We couldn't have done that without the love and support that we've received from many folks within our community. When your water facilities go out and you still have to maintain 24/7 operations, you got to think about things like where are you going to get food and how are folks going to use the restroom. And so we've had help from folks with Key City, Can Do, Clean Latrine Porta Potties. Those folks have set up porta potties for us at our facility until our water returned. We want to thank Walmart North, Texas Roadhouse, Chick-fil-A, United Grocery Store on South 14th, Abilene Wrecker, Jeep Club, and our Mexican Tequila restaurant. Those folks have all contributed food so that we can make sure that when restaurants and things are closed and our folks can't get home to eat, that they can continue to be out there ready to respond. And so we want to thank those folks. A part of what our staff has done, if you're a civilian employee or a sworn member that can't do your regularly assigned duties, then you would help out in dispatch with our calls that are coming in for welfare checks, or you would help out in the Emergency Operations Center and be able to support the calls that would come in there. So we have found something for our folks to be able to do. For the folks that work the road, there were a number of calls that came in for accidents, for disturbances. So our folks were quite busy. We're starting to see some of that call load start to decrease as the thaw is on. Although we're aware that there are people that are in warming shelter facilities that will also probably have additional calls as they start to return home from those shelters. We did provide security at those shelters to also describe some of the other things that our folks have been doing. Unfortunately, we did experience a homicide investigation that had to take place. That occurred at an apartment complex. 35-year-old female is deceased, and we did take 2 juveniles into protective custody at this point. It is a homicide investigation. I can tell you that we do not have fears or concerns of additional threats to the community. Because the case involves juveniles, there are laws that protect what we can release and what we can't say. So I can't provide any further clarification other than to say that we don't have any other additional threats or concerns to our community. We did have a couple of minor accidents involving our patrol vehicles. One of those, a citizen had rear-ended one of our patrol vehicles while we had a prisoner in that vehicle. Again, there was very minor to no injury in that accident, and then we had a collision where one of our vehicles slid into the back end of a car that was owned by one of our citizens. And so those are the only 2 significant accidents to our fleet. We have to commend our fleet department here with the city. They kept us running. They worked tirelessly, not only their normal shift during the day, but also into the late hours to make sure that we could get our vehicles fueled up and make sure that they were serviced so that we didn't have any vehicles go down at a time when we critically needed those. With that, I will...
I have a quick question,
okay.
Sorry, about the homicide. Were there any arrests made in that?
At this point, it's an ongoing investigation. We have not made an arrest or filed any charges.
Since questions have been opened up real quick, the judge was mentioning they had 3 deaths out in the county. Have y'all encountered any of that or any calls due to weather?
We have experienced some folks that have died as a result of the weather. I know Chief Candy Flores is planning to come up here and speak to those, as those are being treated as medical situations. Those are not criminal investigations.
And Candy's going to extend on that.
That's correct.
Chief.
Very good. Chief Flores.
Good morning. Chief Flores, The freezing temperatures have brought some unique challenges to our fire department. Although we've experienced some of the same challenges as the rest of Abilene with no water, no electricity at our fire stations, we have made accommodations to get us through that time period. Currently, all fire stations are back up and running with water and electricity. We do have all stations staffed currently. The freezing temperatures have caused issues with our apparatus. We have had frozen pumps, frozen valves, frozen hand lines, and numerous other equipment issues that have presented on scene while trying to conduct our operations. We have had issues with fire hydrants. Some of those have been due to the water treatment facilities going down and not having pressure to establish water sources. We have had some freezing valves and freezing caps at some fire stations or fire hydrants. And we've had numerous structure fires this week. On Monday alone, we had 4 working structure fires. We did have to stand by and protect exposures at one structure fire on Cedar Crest. That was very unusual, very heartbreaking for our department to have to watch that happen. But we did protect the nearby structures, and there were no life issues involved in that incident. I do want to clear up some miscommunications about the structure fire last night, 2200 block of South 7th. It was reported in the news that we also experienced the same issues at the structure fire and that we stood by and protected exposures while this house burned. That is incorrect. We were able to establish a water source. We did fight this structure fire offensively, and we did minimize the damage to the structure, which means we saved the structure versus what the fire caused as far as damage goes. We have experienced 3 deaths in Abilene that can be contributed to possible weather conditions. Those have been different circumstances in all 3. One was due to exposure to the elements directly, a person outside of a home. The second was due to someone who had lost their power for 3 days straight, and that contributed along with some existing conditions of health. And then the third had to do with some limitations on resources that were available to them medically, may have contributed to that overall demise. Other than that, we are adapting and overcoming and doing what we can to remain in service and continue to provide everything that our citizens expect from us.
Were any of those structure fires due to the fact that people were trying to stay warm?
No, not that we have heard. One structure fire in particular may have been contributed to some shaking, heating conditions, but other than that, they were just either because of a heat source that was malfunctioning or a heat source that was too close to combustibles.
You guys see death and destruction all the time. How does it affect you guys to respond to some of these death calls, knowing that could it possibly have been prevented?
Well, I think we know that most deaths can be prevented in our line of service. The things that we see are usually traumatic. So when we get called to those instances, they all have some sort of regret to them one way or another, and we don't like seeing it, but we continue to do our job and we continue to get ready for the next call.
And you said one of them was due to exposure. Is that just somebody that was out in the open? Can you
Right.
expand on that a little bit?
That was a call that came in on a check welfare in the 600 block of Walnut. I believe it was a transient that had been sleeping outside and had spent that time exposed to the elements.